Josh Bills. I'm a principal at the Bonadillo Group, and today we're going to be talking about FraudFindr and also fraud trends that we're seeing currently in the U.S. to kind of start us off and kick off a discussion of why we created FraudFindr in the first place, why it seems necessary in the current environment. First, a little disclaimer. This presentation is intended for educational use. It's informational only and is not independent professional advice in any way from the firm. Okay, fraud trends in the US. Well, I wish we had better news, but the trend for fraud in the US is heading in the wrong direction, okay? As you can see clearly from the stats on the screen. Consumer fraud losses are up over 250% since 2020. They're now over $12.5 billion annually. That's a big shift just in the last 5 years. So approximately 1 in 4 Americans report some form of financial fraud or scam occurring in their life in the last few years. And there's an explosive growth in specifically check fraud. Traditional check fraud has spiked almost 400% since the pandemic. From 2021 to 2022, suspicious activity reports on check fraud nearly doubled from 350,000 to over close to 700,000 in 2022, largely due to these mail fraud schemes. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about imposters being able to defraud individuals. And a specific example that I think we all receive are those robocalls that we get, I feel like almost every day, where somebody's saying that you owe them money or you owe a creditor this X amount. And when you try to find out additional details, they need your credit card information first before they give you any more information, that kind of thing. And oddly enough, the Wall Street Journal yesterday, right on their front page, had a poignant example, those angry easy pass text messages that you might get, okay? I'm sure none of you have fallen for this, but I think we all have gotten this once or twice over the past couple of years, where you get a text message that says, hey, this is your final reminder from EasyPass. We're gonna suspend your license and take away your car basically if you don't pay us $400. And it's an interesting article you might want to check out, where they've found out that this is actually largely funded by Chinese criminal groups. So basically what happens, according to the article, is that there's Chinese server farms that blast out these text messages. People respond, even if it's 0.5% or 0.25% that respond, that's something for them. And it directs them to a phishing website that categorizes their credit card info. The perpetrators then find, once they have your credit card info, the perpetrators are in China, but they find somebody in the US, a particular type of gig worker on the black market, who will max out the credit cards for a small fee. So this scheme has found a way to transfer credit card data to basically a gig worker's phone, such as Google Pay, Apple Pay, and they purchase gift cards and they're mailed to the criminal network in China. When they get to China, they're sold at a discount to consumers, and then that funds the criminal underground organization. So to a bank in America, it looks like a legitimate Apple Pay transaction. It's your Apple Pay. It's occurring in the US. They don't care. Your bank doesn't specifically know your details of how you act. And if you're 85 years old and you went to Best Buy and purchased 100 Apple gift cards, they don't know that that's a weird transaction. Okay, they don't flag it. And so the article said that in total, approximately 33,000 of these toll scam messages are sent daily in the US as of last month. So that's approximately 3.5 times higher than when first tracked in January 2024. So I thought that was an interesting example. It's very poignant. It's current day activity going on that we receive, but it's just one example of how fraud is increasing in the US. So again, fastest type of fraud growing is person-to-person scams. So think of Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, those are climbing in double digits every year. And this makes sense, right? Because I know myself, I never carry cash around. If my kids need cash for something like the ice cream truck, that's not happening. They better have a Venmo or something else for me to be able to hit it and just, transfer the money. So what does this do? This shift in our society, well, it increases the attack surface for imposters, for nefarious individuals to obtain your funds. They don't have to siphon your wallet. They don't have to take it out of your pocket anymore. They can just do it through systems like this. It's gotten to such an extent that in New York State in August announced a lawsuit against Zelle, where they stated that in Zelle's haste to compete with other payment platforms like Venmo, they hastily overlooked key protective measures for consumers. So think of when you enter a person's Zelle or Venmo ID, and there's another one that's like very similar to it in the options to choose from. Well, if you click that wrong one, and there isn't like a protection on it confirming that this is the individual you want to send the money to, such as a text message going to that individual or a QR code that you would scan, then you've likely paid an imposter, right? So in the beginning of Zelle getting on its feet, New York State charges that, hey, you all didn't have these proper protections in place that you knew consumers would need. How we act and how we're not always rational. You should have had something in place. So New York State is currently going after these payment, person-to-person payment platforms because of the increasing use of imposter schemes against them. Another option for imposters to target are high value ones like business and government accounts. Those are top victims continually and consistently. And this is largely due to them having, large balances in accounts that oftentimes aren't missed immediately. So I can think of a recent example that we've worked on. We in an APS department in New York that had nearly $100,000 stolen from the account over approximately a 4-month period. So this bank account was housing all the rep payee funds for the individual's Social Security. And for the entire county, the rep payee people that are within APS, and somebody found a way to get into that specific bank account and siphon off funds, withdraw funds. And at first they did it very smartly and only took a couple thousand here, a few thousand there, and they increased it as time went on. As a couple months went on, they got a little more greedy. At one point, they took out or attempted to take out 20 grand. And the bank actually flagged that and said, hey, this is an APS account. Why are we taking out 20 grand? And they were able to notify the county that, hey, it looks like you have some activity on here that might be nefarious. But the APS department itself did not identify it, did not flag it because the caseworkers were overwhelmed. They had too many cases to work on. Reconciliations of the account were months behind. They had okay procedures in place, but they were not following them. So it allowed this activity to take place. And so that's what we see in the county and local government levels, especially that we work with. That is often the case, that you may have a procedure in place that would protect against this, but a procedure is only as good as the amount of time that you put into it and whether you're actually enforcing it. Okay, again, as we spoke about, why is fraud increasing? Key drivers, if you look at this chart over on the right here, fraud cases in bank accounts, 22% are done through ATMs, 29% through branch transactions, and a full 49% are now done remotely. So that was interesting to me. Again, the shift to online banking and payments has expanded perpetrators' attack surface so that they can really target individuals electronically from across the world in a way that was unheard of, say, 5, 10, 20 years ago. Additionally, in the last 5 years, we've all heard of pandemic era stimulus programs and remote work creating new entry points. So think about the PPP program and the amount of fraud that occurred in there. I think it was close to it was over $100 billion that was associated with the PPP program that ended up being fraudulent activity, and they're still prosecuting it today. So I know that the U.S. government has recently stated that they've charged over 3,000 individuals and businesses right now with PPP fraud, but that's definitely still ongoing. Um, and as we saw with our Wall Street Journal article at the beginning of this presentation, technology is only as good in a moral sense as its user. So AI, has blurred the line between fact and fiction increasingly. And, I'd expect that all of us have had letters notifying us that our social security number or other sensitive data has been breached. So this increase in the use of technology by perpetrators to infiltrate your data, your life, and wrest your money from you and your clients is increasing at a pace that is really untenable for a lot of people. Okay, real world impact, specifically with elder fraud. FraudFindr traditionally has done a lot of work with elder fraud cases. We have several contracts with APS departments and others where we review rep payee accounts for strange activity. We identify, hey, these are the types of transaction that should occur in this account through FraudFindr, and the software will flag anything that is outside those parameters and assist us with identifying and keeping a clear understanding of what's going on in the account. So elder fraud is an area that we follow closely at the firm, and approximately $3.4 billion is lost annually in the US due to elder fraud. It's 10 times higher than with younger victims, as you could imagine. And it's been a 40% increase in APS financial fraud just in the last 5 years. And as you can see in this example from one of the state governments nearby, where it identifies types of abuse investigated, financial exploitation is by far the largest for APS departments. So it's approximately 25%, and self-neglect, emotional abuse, and physical abuse, others are far below it. So and it's not just fraud that occurs with, say, if we're taking the APS example, it's not just fraud that occurs in the account by an outside actor. Organizations also have to be concerned on what's going on with their own folks. So another department that we recently worked with, a caseworker was diverting Social Security funds of several elderly clients who were trusting of this individual who, she is there representing the payee. She is there to protect their funds. And she had been doing it for several years. And it was only caught when one client became suspicious of anyone dealing with her money because her daughter had actually recently defrauded her. So she was on her guard. And when she noticed she was checking her statements. And when she noticed something unusual, she flagged it, called the APS manager. And that's what took the case forward. But the county, large county, very large county in New York State, they had very few safeguards in place to protect the use of client funds. Managers were supposed to review account activity, but not all most of the procedures were built around protecting the individual from imposters or outside actors, not the threat of internally a caseworker becoming part of the transactions and taking that person's money. So she knew exactly how much she could take, this caseworker, without triggering a managerial review. She knew the system, and she knew that it was lax and it had a bunch of holes, and she took advantage of all of them. And so an interesting fact about that case is that she had a side business of a local children's dance studio, and she was using a lot of that money to fund it. And when the case came out and it went to court, and this person actually went to jail for a several-year sentence, the community couldn't believe it because she was so active in her community and assisted through the dance studio and all that. But again, it occurred because this county did not have proper safeguards in place. They were not checking the accounts. They had very little understanding of what activity should be performed in each account, just because there's so many of them and so few caseworkers. So if you don't have that analysis, that's part of the benefit that we provide through FraudFindr. If you don't have that continual analysis of bank account activity and looking at these thresholds of what should be there and what are the outliers, then you're exposing your organization to undue risk, essentially. Okay. Detecting fraud, red flags and countermeasures. We have the traditional red flags, unusual account activities such as large withdrawals, new payees, ATM, cash outs, that kind of thing. And these are usually detected through one of three methods. So manual audits, those are going through the bank statements, poring over each one, throwing transactions into Excel and doing all that. That's effective, and it's what we see most organizations that we deal with, and counties and businesses do. It's effective, but it's incredibly time consuming for these organizations. As the reviewer is looking over every transaction, and then maybe 2 weeks down the road, they speak to an individual who has more information about the case, and they're able to shed additional light on certain transactions within it. Then they got to go through the entire statements again and flag all those transactions and put them in a bucket. It's an incredible amount of back and forth activity. We've helped counties and nonprofits with it specifically for many years, just because as an accounting firm, we can do it fairly more efficiently before FraudFindr, but with FraudFindr, we can do it much more efficiently. But it's even today, most people that we work with, most clients that we have are still, if they're doing audits of accounts, they're still doing it in this manner, where it's a manual process and incredibly time consuming for an organization. Second way to do it, bank or institutional fraud software. This is used to detect anomalies that are true for a general population, but they often miss the anomalies at the individual level. So they don't know, an institutional or bank software doesn't know what you're thinking, doesn't know what you want, doesn't know your appetites, doesn't know uh, your likes and dislikes and what you're going to spend your money on from week to week or month to month. And so take the example again of that Chinese phishing scheme, the Easy Pass transactions, and an old man, say 80 years old, his Apple Pay gets hit for 100 Apple gift cards that are then mailed to China. Well, the bank didn't detect that because he used Apple Pay. Apple Pay's safe. Apple Pay is transparent. It's okay. It was done in the US, but of course it was fraudulent. He doesn't own a PlayStation, so he's not buying 100 PlayStation gift cards. This is the kind of thing that a general accounting software is not going to detect and be able to analyze you and for you and flag. Last category would be forensic software tools. So this is what is similar to what we're talking about with FraudFindr, right? The ability to combine the best elements of both a manual audit, a manual review, where you have specific knowledge of the case yourself, and the benefits of institutional hardware and software where you're going in. That software is reviewing the statements, scanning them, able to categorize transactions for you, dump them into a CSV file that you can further review or pass on to other individuals and provide in a report format. This is the attempt to combine both worlds, right? And using AI to categorize everything at once and save you an incredible amount of time. So that's what we're looking at with FraudFindr. It was something that the firm saw as a valuable investment for our clients, because we have literally been doing these types of cases with counties, with nonprofits, with corporations, where we're reviewing their accounts. We've been doing them for decades, and we like it because they pay us, but we see that using a tool like FraudFindr, developing something like that where you can dump in the statements themselves and have it analyze it instantaneously, essentially, is a much more valuable tool and service that we can provide to our clients. Okay, again, emphasizing the shortfalls of traditional methods, right? So that's that little manual spreadsheet on the right. We literally see that kind of stuff still with some of our clients, where it's literally paper format and spelling it out, writing it out, and this is how they are performing account reconciliations, identifying transactions, flagging them, that sort of thing. Not even on Excel. So you can see the value here, where it would just be light speed difference between this and something that is software based. So we especially see it prevalent among small to mid-sized businesses, nonprofits, and government. Nearly every APS or special investigation department that we've worked with has this type of manual process where they're going in and performing it manually. Again, it causes inefficiency, data entry errors. If you put it in the wrong cell or you misflag something, Excel itself is not going to detect that. You're going to have to be the one that goes back and reviews that. There might be inconsistency among caseworkers as to how they organize their spreadsheets, what data they're pulling out of it. Each individual is going to look at it differently, and it creates massive reporting bottlenecks, right? Flowing through years of bank statements and transactions. It takes an incredible amount of manpower to do that. Okay, and as I've kind of touched on, the solution that we tried to create with FraudFindr is it's an OCR bank account review software. So you're going in, you're uploading your bank statements that you want to review, and the OCR within FraudFindr crunches it all down, analyzes it, and pushes it into the software for you to review. So it's specifically designed to address problems with bank account fraud, and our users across the board report reduced case prep time, improved confidence in the data accuracy. Again, there's not that variation from investigator to investigator in terms of what they're looking at. And it makes it very easy to collaborate with law enforcement. At the end of the day, when you've reviewed a case, you have all your transactions set and flagged into a manner and put in categories that you want them to be. A report is created that you can then share with law enforcement, with your legal team, with a connected department, and they're able to see your scope of work, any notes that you have on each transaction, the summary reconciliations, and take it from there instead of having to do it again manually through an email, that sort of thing. Last month, we were pleased when we put out basically surveys to our current clients and said, hey, what do you think? What needs to be improved? What's really good? How's FraudFindr working for you? Riverside County Adult Protective Service came back and said, we went from having 300 pages of statements that we'd have to analyze, manually review, take hours and hours to do it, to having a 3-page report that I can just send over to law enforcement, have them review, and we discuss. Okay, it's simple. It provides a tremendous amount of clarity, and it just furthers the investigation much more quickly than traditional methods. Again, the efficiency of it dramatically cuts the traditional investigation timeline. When we talk to Alaska State Troopers about how they're finding the software, the main investigator over there told me the amount of time it saves him seems magical. So I told him, well, I'm going to use that going forward. But it decreases processing time to a degree that your caseworkers, instead of spending days on a long case that is manual process and review, they're able to consider the case, understand what should be driving the case going forward in terms of outcomes, and really have time for case development and direction instead of just going through, the root transaction analysis. They're able to think about it, have time to process it with their management team, and go forward with it in a rational direction. Lastly, before I skip over to the actual software, we've designed FraudFindr to be very scalable. So just yesterday, we were on a call with a single individual who was hoping to use FraudFindr for a divorce case to understand what he's obtained during discovery, the statements and all that, and categorize it and provide him with a final reconciliation of what is where. It can absolutely do that for a single individual who is looking at just 2 accounts, let's say. It can also be scaled, as we have with several counties, where entire departments are using it to review, say, rep payee cases or special investigation divisions when they're investigating a particular person or a group of individuals and looking at their statements and analyze those. So each site, FraudFindr site, it's cloud-based, it's unique to each organization or individual who's using it. Nothing is obviously shared, and it can be scalable to whatever level you need to use it. At the end of this, again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me, call me. I'm open at any time to giving you a full, you and your organization, a full demo of FraudFindr, or if you even just have a couple questions, we can jump on a call. And that's my contact info right there. So I'm going to end the presentation and switch on over to our example here. Okay. So this is essentially the main screen of FraudFindr. So when you're opening up a case, it would be referred to this screen first. This is the case details section. It gives you an overall review of basic case information, the primary information, the individuals involved, the victim, the suspect, and then you also go into this area and identify what are the trends associated with each individual. So the victim in the case, what's their, what type of, do they own the home that they live in? Are they in care services? What type of monthly bills do they have for their household? And all of this is the data gathering that you wouldn't get through, say, your bank scanning your statements, doing a general analysis of statements in general and having that review of general population. This is where your knowledge of the case is brought into FraudFindr, makes it specific to what's going on with these individuals that are either being investigated or being defrauded. And that's one of the key drivers here that is basically a best practice and a growth area for the software and assisting you with your analysis is this ability to go in and identify these markers. Okay, do they have a laundry service? Do they have cable? Do they have utilities that they pay for? You're going to click all that, and you can identify thresholds of transaction values within each of them. And when the account is processed by the software, by the AI, it's going to categorize them all based on this information. So that is new. That is something that when your bank is scanning it, they are not going to perform that type of analysis. This is you basically transferring the information that you have in this specific case and throwing it into the software and being able to really have that synergy between both what would occur in a manual process with you knowing and talking with the case or with the victim and any other folks involved, and the strength there, the processing power that is there in a software. So again, in the case details section, it gives you the basic info and what we just edited and put in there regarding the victim and the perpetrator are saved and considered when we get to the account screen. So this is where you would load each bank statement. So say you have bank statements of 50 pages that will run through the software and in a short amount of time. You can do much larger statements as well, though. Those might take an overnight process. Say you have 400 pages of bank statements that you want processed. It's going to take the software a little bit of time to crunch those numbers. So we would recommend, hey, upload those the night before you're actually going to want to analyze them, and in the morning it'll all be set, processed by the OCR and ready for your review. So with each of these, you can then, once you're on the account screen, view down into each account, and the first thing that you'll see is an overall reconciliation of activity. Okay, it gives it to you by year. You can change that up if you want, but the traditional way that it will show it is by year, showing deposits, expenses, any other specific line items down there, and it goes from there. And then in the transactions tab, you can review that fully. Basically, it goes through each transaction, gives you an idea of what is going on with each one, and you can categorize. So you can attribute these to either the victim, another individual, or the perpetrator themselves. And It adds those all up and provides it to you in a report at the end that gives you an analysis of what the total amounts would be. And you can drill down into these, okay, and filter it as much as you want for specific dollar amounts, for specific payees or payors, and really break it down. And this is the advantage of FraudFindr as you're going through a case. And say the case takes 6 months. Say there's a long discovery period and statements trickle in. You might get 1 year of statements in September, and then 6 months later, get 5 more years of statements for that same instance. And caseworkers we've seen, and we do it ourselves when we assist them, you have to go back, look at old notes, look at old statements, try to find all those transactions and categorize them, redo it all, reformat your Excel. FraudFindr does all that for you. You identify the transactions, categorize them in a specific area that you want them to be, and flag them as suspicious or as okay, and go from there. So at any point when you receive additional information for this case, it is saving you time, not just initially through the OCR crunch. It is saving you time in the future when you need to update the facts in the case, when you receive more information. It will be there. It will have that ability to shift the focus for you. And again, it uses AI to fill in each category and runs an analysis of those transactions and gives you a listing of, okay, do we have missing data here? Sometimes, well, quite often actually, when we receive a case from a county or a nonprofit, there'll be a couple months missing in between 5 years of transactions. Well, instead of the caseworker going through all that and having to sort all the pages and figure out, because often when they receive them from a victim or a perpetrator, they're not organized. These are just, here's the statements. You don't have to organize them. You can put them in the FraudFindr. FraudFindr will tabulate them and show you, okay, here's the statements that are missing because we can't compile this data. We can't reconcile it. Let's figure out where the rest of that is. And it will also identify the suspicious activity that is based on the information you gave it in the case details section. So say you're going through it and you identify, the software identifies an area that's outside the threshold that you identified for withdrawals. Okay, it noticed a ton of cash withdrawals. You said, all right, this person is 70 years old. They're pretty much homebound. They don't do a lot, but look, there's a ton of transactions that are withdrawals. All their stuff is on auto pay. What's going on here? FraudFindr is going to identify those transactions for you to dig in further and discover, additional information for them. At the end of the day, when you feel that you've identified the transactions that are suspicious, that are attributable to the perpetrator, and the others that are purely performed by the victim, are safe transactions, you can develop a report that you can use to transfer to other departments, to your legal team, to law enforcement. And what's nice about it is you can tailor to however you want to organize it. So in this example, there's a scope of, okay, we're looking at these 3 accounts. Here's the case background details in Latin. I'm assuming that won't be how you would organize it, but you can put details in there of the account, anything that you've identified so far. You can give also specific elements that would be attributable to the transactions, different categories, and that would go in a different section of the report. And it really breaks it down in a way that an individual who has not seen this case before can understand where we're at with it today. What are we looking for in terms of spending that, in this example, is attributable to the victim and is deemed okay, spending that's attributed to the suspect, and other stuff that is still unaccounted for. We haven't figured out exactly what is going on with it, and we need to dig in further. Okay, this is, again, one of the main benefits of the software is it presents those reports in a way that's easily reviewed. It's very clear what we're showing here in terms of reconciliation of the accounts and basic account information in our analysis. And it also breaks down what types of transactions are attributable to each group. all the way down to giving us, you can tailor this to be as detailed as you want. We've made it pretty detailed here to show what each transaction section would be like. But again, this is a powerful tool that's part of FraudFindr and makes it so that the processing of cases from one area of your organization to the next or to an outside group does not create a bottleneck. It's oftentimes in that reporting cycle where you know that you have a fraud occurring, you know that you have to bring it to the next level. Well, how do we show that data? What's the best way to do it? And for each caseworker, they usually have a different methodology or a different way they think of doing it, and it's often inefficient that we found. So this is a way to show it in a way that is clear, concise, and literally you just hit report the sections that you want, give a little detail, off it goes. So that is generally what we're looking at here. It's a way to analyze the software, analyze the accounts that would take an individual, sitting in a chair, many hours to complete. We've worked on cases that are upwards of 10 years of data with individuals, and that is a lot of information to crunch, many transactions. And again, FraudFindr can throw all that into the OCR overnight, analyze it for you once you've stipulated the types of transactions that should be occurring in the account, and then a threshold of, okay, this might be a variance with it, and everything else is going to be flagged, and you categorize it and take the investigation to the next level. So that's what we're looking at doing with the software. Again, it's been around. We've had it for a couple of years now, and we're looking to. Right now, we're investing heavily in it. We're investing in a new OCR that will make it go from processing one of those larger cases from half a day to an hour or two. So it's a really neat tool that we've had a lot of success with counties working with it and nonprofits, and looking forward to showing it to any of you who may want further information on it. And yeah, we appreciate your time today for gathering for this. But again, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions that you'd like to ask, or have a full demonstration for your organization. That's definitely doable. So appreciate your time today. If anyone has a specific question in the chat, they could feel free to throw it in. But
yeah, thank you, Josh. That was a great session. And again, as Josh said, if any of you have a specific question you want to put in the chat, please feel free to. But other than that, if you don't have any specific questions, we will send the recording of this session and the materials out within the next week. So we appreciate you attending today, and make sure to register for our other FoxPoint webinar series that are occurring this week. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.